What would you do if the person you thought would support you abandoned you at the hardest moment of your life? I was a 17-year-old waitress trying to make ends meet while finishing school. I worked at this small, rundown cafe that no one really noticed, but it paid the bills. He worked there too, my boss. Handsome, older, and always kind in the way that made me feel like I mattered, like I was more than just a kid behind the counter. I didn't realize it at first, but I guess it started with the little things. A compliment here, a casual touch there, until it wasn't just the cafe that felt like home. It was him. It was summer. The kind of summer where everything feels like it's in full swing, like there's a chance for something better. I was naive enough to believe it. He was telling me he cared. He promised. He told me everything would be okay, that he'd take care of me if something ever went wrong. And I believed him. I needed to. I wanted to. Then one day it did go wrong. I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't sure at first. It wasn't like I could just walk into the clinic and be done with it. I was scared. I thought about what it meant for me, for my future. But I remembered what he told me, what he promised me. And for a second, I felt like everything would be all right. I wasn't alone. He would be there. He had to be. I couldn't see it then, but I was already depending on him. So I told him. I remember the moment. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand speeches. I just told him I was pregnant. He looked at me for a second, and I could see his face freeze. And then he said it. "We'll figure this out," he said, like it was something simple, something we could just solve. I thought that was it. I thought it would all work out. But it didn't. The next few days were a blur. He didn't call, didn't text. I tried to reach out, but he ignored me. It wasn't just silence, it was cold. Like the promise he made to me never existed. He disappeared. Like I was nothing more than a casual mistake. He was gone. I remember sitting in my room staring at the phone, trying to wrap my head around it. How could someone do that? How could someone who told you everything would be okay just vanish, like I didn't matter, like I wasn't even worth the time it took to tell me it was over? And then the question started. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Where was I supposed to turn? But I didn't know how to ask for help. He was supposed to be the answer. He was supposed to be the one I could rely on. And now he wasn't even picking up the phone. I still don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought he'd stay. Maybe I thought he'd do the right thing. But in the end, I was left alone. Alone with a future I wasn't prepared for. It felt like being left in the middle of a road, waiting for a car that never showed. And all I could do was stand there, still holding my breath, hoping things would change. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever been let down by someone you thought you could trust? I can't remember exactly how many days passed before it hit me. It was more of a gradual realization that nothing was ever going to go back to normal. I sat at home, staring at the walls, wondering how I ended up in this mess. He had promised me, hadn't he? He had said it would be okay. But it wasn't. I tried to get in touch with him. Texts, calls, voicemails, nothing. He had completely ghosted me. His silence wasn't just painful, it was suffocating. I started to feel like I was suffocating under the weight of my own desperation. What had I done wrong? Was I just some kind of fool falling for all the nice words he'd said to me? Was I just a mistake to him? It wasn't until the phone call came that I truly understood the depth of my situation. I was at work. What little work I had left to do at the cafe now that I hadn't heard from him in so long. The phone rang, and I saw his name on the screen. For a second, I thought my heart might burst out of my chest. Maybe he was finally ready to talk. Maybe he was ready to fix things. But no, it wasn't him. It was his wife. I don't know how she found out. I still don't. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Her voice on the other end was cold, controlled, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Do you think I'm stupid?" she asked. "Do you think I didn't notice? Did you really think he'd keep his promises to you?" She didn't wait for a response. She didn't need to. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I wanted to argue, to tell her that I had no idea what she was talking about, but the truth was clear. She knew. She knew everything. "Stay away from my family," she continued. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now." Her words weren't a request. They were a demand, a directive. Like she was in control. She told me that he was her husband, and I had no place in their lives. He was hers, and I wasn't anything more than some passing distraction. I didn't even bother replying. What was the point? What could I say? I ended the call and stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. It was like I'd been punched in the gut. How could he do this to me? Promise me everything and then turn me over to her like I was some secret he could just hide away? A part of me felt like I should have been more surprised. But I wasn't. I had known. Deep down, I had known that all of it, every word, every touch, had been empty. He wasn't going to take responsibility. He wasn't going to be there. But hearing it from her, hearing her tell me what I already knew, made it feel real. And that made everything hurt that much more. And then the next twist hit me. A few hours after the call, I saw him. He walked into the cafe like nothing had changed. His face was smooth, his posture relaxed, like he hadn't just disappeared for weeks. He didn't even glance my way at first. But when he did, his eyes darted away quickly. And then he did something I'll never forget. He walked up to me, and I braced myself, expecting some kind of apology, some kind of attempt to explain himself. But no, he just stood there, staring at me like I was the one who had betrayed him. He didn't say sorry. He didn't even acknowledge anything that had happened. Instead, he casually dropped a check on the counter, the check for the last few weeks' work. Like that was all I was to him, just a transaction. I wasn't worth more than that. I couldn't breathe. It was as if everything had shifted, but I didn't understand how. I thought he might have come to talk, to sort things out, but instead he treated me like a business transaction, something he'd be done with once the paperwork was signed. The silence between us was suffocating. He turned to leave, but before he did, I caught a glimpse of the ring on his finger, the reminder of his wife, of everything that should have mattered more than whatever this was between us. But I didn't say anything. I didn't stop him. I didn't tell him how much it hurt, how much I needed him to acknowledge what we'd shared, even if it was just a lie. I didn't need to. He already knew. Have you ever been put in a situation like this, when everything felt like a lie and you had to walk away? It's funny how quickly you can go from feeling like the world is ending to just moving on. I didn't want to move on. I didn't want to be strong. I didn't want to feel like I had to pick up the pieces of someone else's mess. But I did. I went home that night after seeing him in the cafe. I sat there, staring at the walls again, trying to understand what had just happened. It felt like I was watching someone else's life play out. Someone who wasn't me, who didn't have to deal with any of this. Someone who hadn't been betrayed by a man who promised everything and delivered nothing. But I was me, and I was the one left picking up the pieces. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know if I should just forget about it all and move on. Maybe I should have. But I couldn't. Not when the truth was staring me in the face, and not when I knew I would never be able to forget what happened. It took a few more days before I made a decision. His wife had made her call, and now it was time for me to make mine. She thought she'd won. She thought that by shutting me down and telling me to leave her family alone, she'd be done with me. But I knew better. I knew there was something else that had to be said. I had to confront him. I didn't care if he didn't deserve it. He needed to know that I wasn't just going to disappear, that I wasn't going to just accept being discarded like some dirty little secret. He needed to understand that what he did to me mattered. So I showed up at his office. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't care who was there or if he was busy. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I needed him to see me, to hear me. I walked in, and he barely even looked up from his desk at first. His eyes flicked to me, and for a second he looked confused, like he didn't understand why I was there. But he didn't ask. He didn't try to stop me. And then I did it. I said what I needed to say, and I didn't hold back. I told him everything. I told him how I'd felt abandoned, how I felt like a fool for believing him, how he had promised to be there for me, and how he had left me alone to deal with all of it. I wasn't angry, not in the way you'd expect. I wasn't screaming or throwing things. I didn't raise my voice. I just let the words hit him, one after the other, like a slow punch to the gut. He didn't know how to react. His face went pale, and his mouth opened like he was going to say something, but nothing came out. And that was when I realized he was scared. Not scared of me, but scared of the truth. Scared of facing the consequences of his actions. Because no matter how many times he tried to ignore it, he knew what he did was wrong. He knew I wasn't just some mistake. But he didn't want to face that. He didn't want to own up to any of it. So instead of apologizing, instead of admitting to his guilt, he did the one thing he'd been doing all along. He avoided it. He sat there, like he was waiting for me to say something that would make everything okay. But there was nothing left to say, nothing left to fix. I stared at him for a long time. I could see the regret in his eyes. But I didn't care anymore. The person who needed to fix things wasn't me. It was him. And then I did something that surprised even me. I stood up, took one last look at him, and turned around to leave. I didn't wait for him to say anything. I didn't need him to apologize. It was too late for that. I had already let go. Do you think it's ever too late to make things right? Or is some damage just beyond repair,